We're here, 5 for talking. Hello, Internet. We are back. Caps, Campo, missing Bargo. We love him. He's going to be back soon. Don't worry. We got a top 6 today. Our top 6 favorite players from the 90s. And this is the way we're doing it in our normal top 6 fashion with teams or players. It'll be forward, 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 defense, defense, goalie. So obviously there's probably 3 other forwards that we like more than the 2 defensemen and the goalie, maybe, but that's not how we do it here. This is how we're doing it. So, as usual, I let the guest go first. I was waiting for his reaction. Yeah, he's not a guest. He's not a guest. He works here.
I work here part-time.
He works here part-time for free, just like all of us. We're on internship.
I'm not invited to some of the other videos, so
you know what?
At least I never get the invite.
We're gonna thank Nikki for our internship, for letting us work here.
Just let me know when I start getting paid.
Yeah, never. Just like me, but we do it because we love it. And here we go.
All right. Wendell Clark, Wayne Gretzky, Peter Forsberg are my forwards. Ray Burke, Scott Stevens are my defense, and Martin Broder, my goalie.
You know what? I do very much like your list. This might coincide with a video that happens later. We don't know yet. But yeah, I really like that list. There's a few choices on there that I forgot. But that's okay because I'm very happy with my list. And I believe as a kid, even till this day, a few of these guys remain my favorite players of all time. So here we go. Forwards, Jágr, Sundin, Mario Lemieux. Defense. Okay, this was really hard for me because there's a lot of defensemen that I really like. Mm-hmm. But I thought about it and I was like, who can I pick that would be different that Caps might not pick that I also really like to the point that they are worthy of being on my list? And I knew you were going to take Ray Bork. Scott Stevens caught me off guard. But anyways, Jágr, Sundin, Lemieux, Chris Pronger, Nicholas Lindstrom, Felix Potvin. I know you were expecting me to say Hasek.
Pronger was almost on my list.
Bork was my next choice. But in my head, I was like, I know you're going to pick Bork, so I just want to make my list different. And I do... Like I said, there wasn't a lot of defensemen that I loved. Pronger was pretty close to as good as it gets for me.
Yep.
It would have been him, Niedermeyer, Coffey, Bork. I think would have been my 4.
Sorry, who are your forwards again?
Lemieux.
Lemieux, Sundin, Lemieux. I had a feeling you were going to pick Sundin.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, we'll jump into this now. So if we're gonna go, my reasoning behind this, Jágr's my favorite player of all time.
Oh, Sundin?
No, Sundin is my favorite Leaf of all time.
Leaf of all time? Okay, cool.
But Jágr's my favorite player. I've always been a Jágr fan. And call me just someone who wanted to be different, but that's what it was. At the beginning, it was, no one likes this guy. Look how amazing he is. And at that time in the 90s, like, sorry to say, you watch hockey, you had Don Cherry spewing in your ear about European stuff, all this stuff. So it was weird to see people like him. And then I met a few people that liked him too. And I was like, you know what? I'm not ashamed of it. I love Jágr. And he's easily, hockey's not like basketball. So it's not like saying he's easily in the argument for GOAT, greatest of all time. But he's easily in the argument to be a top 5 best player ever in the NHL.
Can't argue with that.
Lemieux is Lemieux. There's only 2 GOATs ever in hockey. That's my opinion. And it's Gretzky, Lemieux. And as much as
I would put Orr up there too.
Okay, but we digress from this conversation. But I agree. You're right. Lemieux is a special place for me. He's not my favorite player, but what he did, his ability is just, I prefer him over Gretzky for the fact that what he overcame in the 90s to do what he did makes him more special to me than Gretzky. If this was an 80s list, I promise you Gretzky would have been on my list. But I think that, and like I told you, Pronger, Lindstrom was amazing in the 90s. He was better in the 2000s even. Pronger is Pronger. Yeah, Pronger is a player that we'll talk about right now. Let's talk about Pronger for a second. I feel like in the grand scheme of hockey and what's been done and the history, Pronger gets overlooked as one of the best defensemen of all time.
I thought he was more effective in the 2000s. So
okay, that's fair. But
yeah.
When I look, this is how I arranged it, right? Like I said, for me, it was Bork, Coffey. Like I know this is favorites, but I tried to play on my favorite plus goodness, not even a word.
It's fine. Your pick is your pick.
But the reason I went with it is because when I looked into it, he was very prominent in the 90s. He did a lot still. Him and McInnes together was great. And Coffey in the 90s wasn't really there. Like Coffey was all 80s and then a little bit in the early 90s, and then the rest of it was like the 77 point season. And I didn't want to pick him because of that.
I think
Bork
if I remember correctly,
Bork, I knew you were going to take Bork.
I think Coffey had to change his game a little bit in the late 90s.
Well, it got a dirty game.
Yeah. I thought he was still effective when he went to Pittsburgh for those cup runs.
It was after that.
But
Detroit.
But he was still effective when he played for Detroit.
Yeah, he was, but he changed his game. He was no longer as offensive. He went to Detroit, Hartford, because they traded Paul Coffey, I'm pretty sure, for Keith Primo.
He went all over the place. I know he went to
in the 90s he was like up all over. But yeah, that I do appreciate Paul Coffey. And in an 80s list, 80s list might be harder for me than this because the 90s is where I grew up with hockey. And
it made more sense to do the 90s. Yeah.
I mean, we could do any decade. I know a lot of people will make an argument. I did a basketball list with a buddy on WhatsApp, and he was like, well, I didn't want to put Larry Bird on my top 10 list because I never saw him play. And I was like, well, knowing us the way we are with sports, at least me, I'm a stat hound. I'm constantly stats. The more stats, the better. I watch documentaries. I watch videos on YouTube. I watch gameplay. I know enough to be like, this guy belongs on my list. You know what I mean?
True, but when you start getting into the 80s and the 70s and 60s, you're just going to go for the guys that are.
It's more opinion based.
And
it's less
just based on the stats.
It's less feeling. I know opinions still like feeling. It's less feeling and it's less visual, and it's more like what I know now, what do I respect kind of thing, right? We can still do those lists. We will do those lists at some point. But I think Pronger was a strong choice because I still feel like he gets overlooked. For me, Niedermayer was very close.
I forgot about
Stevens. I completely forgot about Scott Stevens. I'll give you that. I was never a fan of him, but I respect what he did. But like I said, the 90s is my era where there's less objectivity and it's more subjectivity, where I know what I liked. Like if you maybe make a 2000s list, it's going to be based on more what I know about hockey than what did I cling to. Do you understand? And like Potvin is my entire childhood. Like you in the 90s list, I could easily have had Curtis Joseph or Ed Belfour because I loved Belfour in Chicago. And I always preach, you know me, about Dominic Hasek, but it's not going to be on my list like this. Patrick Waugh never would be on one of my lists. A favorite. And Broder was, surprisingly, all the stuff I talk about Dominic Hasek, my second goalie choice here was Broder. And then Belfour and then Joseph. I vividly remember Curtis Joseph on St. Louis and Edmonton. If you find this strange, then call me strange. But I remember him more vividly on those two situations than on the Leafs.
I remember all three. I remember what he did. I remember what he did for Detroit as well.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't dispute what Chris Pronger did for Edmonton when he was brought in and he brought Edmonton to the finals.
Agreed.
But that was like in the 2000s, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was 3 years in a row. It was Edmonton, Calgary, Ottawa went to the finals, and then Vancouver. No, Vancouver was a couple years later.
A couple of years later.
And then Ottawa was again a couple years later.
Yeah.
Ottawa lost to Pittsburgh that year. What am I talking about? Sorry.
But when you're going back, and I was pretty much on the same page as you. Belfour was a close second for me.
Yeah.
Because I can't dispute what he did for
we
Chicago.
had this talk. You know what's funny? I watched this video recently when we did our goalies list. I watched it actually like 2 days ago. That's what gave me the idea to do this one. And I was like I wasn't bullshitting about Ed Belfour. Like, he was so cool. Like, he was like, I love Pavan and Curtis Joseph and all the goalies that named Johnny Bauer on that list, whoever else it was, Dominic Hasek. But Ed Belfour was cool. Like, his mask was so cool. And like, I know Kruger
and he was drunk half the time.
Yeah, and it's like when you learn that later, like when I was in my early teens and I learned about that, like in the early 2000s, I was like, he did all of that in that situation. And Chicago was cool in the early 90s. They were like the bad boys. Jeremy Roenick and Tony Amonte, and Chris Chelios, and they were like bang them up power forwards. Like the whole team was like all power forwards and like defensemen that bang.
Yep. Good team.
Okay, let's talk about your list.
Anybody that knows me knows that Wendell Clark is my favorite player ever.
Yeah, I didn't even ask you about that because I expected it, and I'm not upset. My only argument to you is,
you don't have one.
No, and this is not to knock him off.
You don't have one.
Hold on, this is not to tell you he's bad or to knock him off your list. You know me, I definitely always give you shit about Wendell Clark, but I think in the 90s is less. I know when was he drafted? 87?
I believe it was 86.
But
could be right.
His best 3 seasons are like 87, 88, 89, 90. Or sorry, that's 4. 87, 88, 89, 90. And then in the 90s, he kind of got injured, and then
his best season was 92, 90, actually 93, 94. The year before he got traded
before he got traded to Sundin. You're actually right.
Yeah, but 92, 93 when was probably a magical playoff run for him. And I don't think the Leafs have been as successful since then. With the Leafs, with Wendell Clark being captain.
I think captaincy. Okay, you finish your thought.
My thought is that as a player, as a person, as a leader, I think he's very underrated. Guy can score goals, make plays, fight, hit, and lead by example.
I think
the guy, like I remember videos from back he was playing. The guy like fought his teammates in practices.
Yeah, he was badass. Like,
he was, and he didn't talk like he was a badass. You know what I mean?
I get it.
But that guy took on all comers.
Okay, hold on. That's my turn. I agree with you, and you're slightly to a lot older, like possibly like extremely old.
Okay,
cool. Okay, no, but your experience with Wendell Clark is the early. Like obviously, we have about the same, but you're more you got cling to him more when he was like a really cool type of player. for me, like I've said 100 times, my team was the Minnesota North Stars. So I didn't even cling to the Leafs at the beginning of my life. So my memories of the Leafs are Doug Gilmour behind the net. Doug Gilmour against San Jose, against LA Kings. Matt Sundin. Mike Clark is very small, and from what I know, what I've seen, my statistics that I crunch, he just not appealing to me. But I 100% agree with the way that you phrased that. For the first time ever, I can't argue that. What he brought to this team, if 1989-90 Wendell Clark was on this Toronto Maple Leafs right now with those young guys, they would win a cup. I'm just gonna say that. Take it how you friggin' want. You put what you put. Just got the C slapped on his chest. Wendell Clark on this team with John Tavares and those guys, they win a cup. I don't believe in his skill level ever being as good as we thought it was going to be. But that's not this argument. But I love the way you put that, and I agree with you. I do think Matt Sundin is a great captain. I wouldn't say he's the best Leaf captain as far as what captains do. Wendell Clark is definitely up there. You can't deny Wendell Clark belongs in a special place with the Dave Keons and Daryl Sittlers. But so, question for you: you had Wayne Gretzky, Wendell Clark, and
Peter Forsberg.
No Mario Lemieux.
Remember, this is my favorites. So
yeah, I'm
it's
just
not
asking.
based off of stats.
No. I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, this is based off of favorites, and Mario Lemieux was not a favorite of mine.
That's okay. That's fair. And on defense, you had Ray Burke. I knew that, and I admit, like Scout's honor, that I didn't put Ray Burke intentionally on my list because I knew you were going to pick Ray Burke.
Even when I look at the line itself, I believe that this is a line would probably gel.
Oh yeah,
because you got Wendell Clark who would go after people and create plays. You got the skill forward in Wayne Gretzky looking for his line mates, and you got Peter Forsberg that can do it all as well. So, and the defensive pairing, you have Ray Bork and you have Scott Stevens.
Yeah, an offensive and a defensive. I agree, and you have a really good goalie. You have a better goalie than mine if we were facing each other. I think in a modern day of hockey, I think my defensive pair wins. But I don't even want to talk about that. It's just a nonsense conversation. But your forward line makes a lot of sense to me because you have the goal scoring, gritty, do what it takes guy. You have three captain-esque players. So do I, but you do. And you have the extreme skill level of like supreme next level before his time talent of Peter Forsberg. And then you literally put the world's greatest playmaker in the history of any sport in history of history.
Yeah, like
imagine how many goals Wendell Clark and Peter Forsberg would score playing with Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, no, like I know, I realize this is the 90s and Gretzky was,
No, Gretzky was still Gretzky.
Gretzky was still Gretzky. That's the thing. Like
until
what
the
he
last
did for
2 seasons, he was Gretzky.
Yeah, so what he did for LA in 92, 93, getting to the finals. And even when he went to St. Louis, he still played pretty well.
Even in New York, he played well.
Yeah, I think the first 2 seasons when he was in the Rangers team,
I'm pretty sure he got 90 points.
Very well. Yep.
Yeah, and it just forget about the era. I don't care that it's 90s and yeah, he was at the end. Gretzky is Gretzky. Like it's like saying, "Oh, Mario Lemieux shouldn't be on this list." You're crazy.
It's a favorites list. You can put whoever you want.
Yeah. But saying like it belonging in a place that's special, my list, I think you bring a new era of hockey, which was the late 90s. I have 3 guys that can score, pass, play physical, dig for the puck. None of your 3 guys, except maybe Peter Forsberg, are pushing any of my 3 guys off the puck. I mean, I don't want any of my guys to fight Wendell Clark, I don't want that, but I don't think he's pushing like Yager off the puck. Anyways, this is not a this is okay. Run through your list again for the people before we end this.
But I just want to point out one thing. I know you got Chris Pronger as your defense, but
Don't concussion him.
that's why I got Scott
Why?
Stevens.
Why?
You know what I mean?
Do it. You're such a
And
dick.
Scott Stevens is gonna like lay someone out, man.
Did you hear that? You like Sissa Scott?
Hey, he's gonna lay someone out, man.
I don't like you
Anyway,
anymore.
yeah, my line: Gretzky, Forsberg, Clark. Defensive pairing: Bork, Stevens, and goalie Martin Broder.
Yeah, I got Yager, Sundin, Lemieux, Pronger, Lindstrom, and Potvin. And I would like to say thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and we might start doing line battle videos. Would you like to see that? Maybe you will. Say goodbye, Caps.
Peace.